So a lot of times when I tell people that I study mushrooms, the first thing that comes to their mind is hallucinogenic mushrooms. And so when I tell people I study mushrooms, I usually get a little bit of giggling and a couple of jokes about tripping out. And that's, at first, it kind of bothered me because I thought that people didn't really take me seriously when I said I was studying mushrooms. Well, I'm looking at chanterelle mushrooms. I'm trying to figure out if the ones we have here in Wisconsin are different than the ones in other parts of the country and the world. So currently there's a species being called Cantharellus cibarius, and it's a common edible, and they taste like apricots, and they're really delicious. But they look extremely similar to other mushrooms, but we think they're a different species, so we're doing DNA testing on them to see if they're actually different. Well, this is Marge's. It's one of my favorite restaurants. I come here to eat because the food is good. And I like breakfast, and they have good breakfast. So this is from the beginning. It started out when I was in college, and at the time I was really into botany, which is plant biology. And I wanted to be a botanist. So I was always out in the woods, walking around, looking at different plants. And at the time I was trying to find really interesting plants that I had never seen. So I was looking in weird places instead of just looking at what's growing around. And I'd always run into these mushrooms growing, and I'd see them growing and I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And I started seeing them more and more often. And I went to try to ID them one time in the library, and I found that the amount of material they had in the library was just really small. They only had like a shelf like this big. This is at OU. And so I was just intrigued. I was like, well, why don't people know more about this? And it just seemed really interesting to me. And the more I thought about it, I thought about my biology classes. They spend so much time on animals and plants, but they basically give you like one little tiny chapter on fungi, and they're an entire kingdom of organisms. So I just felt like, I don't know, I wanted to know more. See this? So this is called Schizophilum commune, and it's one of the most common mushroom species in the world. It has over 27,000 mating types. So think of humans, we have 2 mating types. This, 27,000 mating types. So very weird species. So before I knew it, my little adventures out into the woods were becoming more and more based on looking for mushrooms rather than plants. And so I joined the Michigan Mushroom Hunters Club, and I was really nervous. I found out about it online, and I went to one of their meets, and it was just at this park, and there was a couple of old guys sitting there, and I was like, is this the Michigan Mushroom Hunters Club? And they're like, yep, it is. It's like, well, can I go on a mushroom hunt with you guys? They're like, sure. So they took me out on mushroom hunts, and they mainly hunt for edible mushrooms in that club. So that was my first exposure to finding mushrooms out in the woods and eating them. And that was pretty interesting to me. That made it even more fun to look for mushrooms. Well, it's pretty easy. These are portobello mushrooms. All you gotta do is put the mushrooms in a pan with some butter and turn it on. And they usually wind up tasting pretty good. So towards the end of my college career, I was really interested in mushrooms, and I knew that that's what I wanted to study. And so there's this website online, Tom Volk's Mushrooms. Tom in general is a world-renowned mycologist, so everywhere you go, people know Tom. At least the mushroom people know him. My senior year at Oakland University, when I was in a field botany class with a very good instructor named Tracy Wacker. and I still talk to her. She's a very interesting person. But I told her I was going to come out here to study mushrooms, and she goes, "With Tom Volk?" And I was like, "Yeah, with Tom." And she goes, "He is the god of mushrooms." And I just laughed because I hadn't met him yet at that point. And so I contacted him. I said, "Hey," I asked him a question about fungus, and I was like, "Hey, I'm really interested in studying fungi." And he's like, "Well, you should come do a graduate program out here in my lab." So when I graduated from Oakland, I came out here, and that brings me to where I am now.
I have a little bit different philosophy than a lot of major professors who assign their students a project and or assign them part of a larger project. I let my students pick their own projects, and as long as it's something that I'm interested in or something I want to learn more about. And I think that's good for them to design a project, figure out what's interesting, and figure out how to study that. So how to go about doing it. And this I think prepares the students better for what's going to happen after they leave my lab, rather than just doing something that I tell them to do.
One of the things I'm trying to do with my project is try to determine if this chanterelle is a new species, and if it is, I'll be able to name this new species, and that will be great for me. I'll be really excited if I get the chance to do that. So, I've been living in La Crosse for about 2.5 years now. Almost done with my master's degree, and then after I'm done with this, I don't really know what I want to do next. Might go on for a PhD program or might get a job somewhere, but I've had some really good experiences out here, and it's just been a great opportunity for me to learn and study mycology, and looking forward to the next step of my life after I finish here. But it's been good. Ready?